Well, it's noon here in Ventnor, New Jersey, and in Bethesda, Maryland, and this is news that you can use from YAA with your hosts Zach and Ray. Zach, that looks like some type of federal building behind you. What's going on? Are
We
you in court
we are
today?
taking we are taking a trip to the Federal Trade Commission this morning, Pops, because the FTC is doing their job. They're standing up for consumers, Dad. The first story we're going to cover today, Pops, FTC
Yes.
striking down NADA's request to extend the timeline for public comments for their proposed rules against car dealers. Let me share the screen, Dad, and then let's jump right into it. We've got NADA saying, hey, we need more time. We need more time. These things you want us to do, the NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association, the National Association of Minority Automobile Dealers, and the American International Automobile Dealers Association all wanted more time to comment, Dad. FTC voted unanimously 5-0, said, nope, we're going to move forward with these rules.
You know what? They've only had 120 years to clean up their act, so I don't know why they think they need more time to comment.
Yeah, you're telling me, Dad, but evidently they wanted it. We have, Dad. I'm going to pull it up on the screen and we're going to read it together. NADA's CEO, he put out a statement. Okay, this statement gets my blood boiling a little bit, to say the least. Mike Stanton, the CEO of NADA, said, Dad, quote, the FTC, their refusal to grant a routine extension of a public comment period, particularly for a proposed rule of such sweeping magnitude that involves no... Yeah, and actually, wait, let's pause for a second. What are the four, do you remember off the top of your head, what are the four implications of these proposed FTC rules?
Truth in advertising. The advertised price has to be the price of the vehicle, including all dealer-installed options and accessories. Enhanced consent on F&I products that the F&I department tries to sell to the consumer. The banning the sale of items that have no value whatsoever, like nitrogen tire fill and nitrogen tire fill's a good one.
Another example would be like Gap on a lease that already has Gap built in.
Gap, yeah, things like that. And the fourth one was that you can't discriminate against people that want to pay cash. And tell them that, well, no, that price has to be, you have to finance it through us. So those are the four things, four things. And I don't know, they don't seem so terrible.
So again, the quote from Mike Stanton, quote, the FTC's refusal to grant a routine extension of a public comment period, particularly for a proposed rule of such sweeping magnitude that involved no advance notice, further displays an unnecessary and misguided rush to judgment in this matter. The quote continues, this proposed rule would cause great harm to consumers. Sorry,
really?
I just had to catch my breath. This proposed rule would cause great harm to consumers by significantly extending transaction times, making the consumer experience much more complex and inefficient, and increasing prices. And NADA again urges the FTC to go back to the drawing board before forcing a series of unstudied and untested mandates lacking evidence that will have such significant negative impact on customers.
Well, it's not going to have negative impact on customers. It's going to have negative impact on the shady dealer practices that many dealers are guilty of employing as part of their sales process. And it's not going to add time. The more transparent a transaction is, the less time it actually takes to complete. If, for instance, Best Buy advertises a Roku TV for $299. Well, guess what? There'll probably be an end cap of Roku TVs at $299, and you pick up the TV that you came in because of the ad, and you put it in your shopping cart, and you go to the cashier, and you pay the $299 plus tax. That transaction, because it was so transparent, doesn't require a lot of time. What might might require time is if the TV was advertised for $299 and the salesperson, it was mandated that the salesperson put it in your cart for you. And by the way, before you can walk to the front to pay for it, let me talk to you about our extended warranty. We have the greatest deals on our extended warranties on TVs, and it's only $49 for the first year, or you can get it for 3 years for $99, which is just a third of the price of the vehicle, but don't third of the price of the TV. But don't worry, it doesn't work like that. Okay, you get to take the TV, you get to take it to the cashier, you get to check out, and that's the way it should be at a car dealership. That doesn't add time; it saves time.
No, I completely agree with you, Dad. The number of people who come to us and actually get frustrated with us, because on our website right now, we have, if you go search for a car on joinya.com, we have an out the door price estimator. You know what it's
Yes.
missing? All of the BS add-ons that the dealership is
Yes.
going to hit you with. Imagine a world where we were just upfront about what those add-ons were. Imagine that. So Mike Stan's idea that this is going to make consumers' lives more miserable. Mike, why do websites like ours exist? Why does this YouTube channel exist? Why does markups.org exist? Because there are ways actually to make it a lot more efficient by, I don't know, treating people like human beings and respecting the fact that we're adults and we can understand information. If dealerships came out and said, hey, supply and demand, we're charging these markups, people would probably search even harder to find the dealerships that aren't charging the markups, that are playing the long game rather than the short game. But you know what? Those who go to pay for the markups, they just go in and they wouldn't be surprised by it. They wouldn't have to be waiting around. I really don't understand why they are pushing back so hard against these rules when in reality, everyone knows we're heading in this direction. The price is the price. Why are you fighting it? I really don't get it, Dad. It makes you look guilty. You know it, and you're just digging your heels in because, I don't know, you make a couple $1 million a year doing that. That's not going to work forever.
Well, it's because they've been getting away with it for 120 years, and they kind of like it like that, and they don't want to be told how they should do business. I mean, the whole idea behind what we do is to educate consumers so that they can make a better decision. But it's also to help educate dealer principals to realize that there's a better way of actually selling their products going forward that is more consumer centric, it's more time sensitive,
Yep.
it's easier for everybody. Everybody can get time back in their lives. There's when I was managing and selling, I used to say to people, there's two things that nobody ever seems to have enough of. And those two things are time and money. Okay. And my pledge, if you want to do business with us, is I will do my utmost to make sure that we waste neither. Okay. It shouldn't take forever to buy a car. The process shouldn't drag on for hours and hours and hours with the hopes of wearing down the customer. They get so tired of the entire process that they don't read all the documents. They don't know everything that they're signing. They don't know everything that they bought because they were just so worn out. Wouldn't it be a better world if it was just all explained easily, honestly, openly from Jump Street? And they could just the consumer could just make a decision as to whether or not they want to move forward. And if they move forward, you just complete the transaction. It doesn't have to be the way it's been. Just because you do something one way for so long doesn't mean it's the right way or even the best way. It just means it's the way you've been doing it because, well, you don't know any better, or you've decided not to know better. There are always better ways to do things. There are always more efficient ways to do things. And I know that these dealers never look at this process through the customer's eyes. They always look at it through their eyes, and they always assume that they know best what's good for the customer, when in reality, they're too stupid to listen to the customers when they're trying to tell them what's best.
Which ultimately leads to the government stepping in to do regulation. It's not like we're sitting here saying we think we need more regulation, but at this point, what other options do you have? I mean, seriously, like we exist, we're trying to push back, and maybe we even have more effect than the FTC's proposed rules. We got to see them actually enforce it. But like that's the end of the spectrum that we're at, Pops. It's like we need a government entity to regulate this, like it's pharmaceuticals or something. It's nuts.
It's just cars, but there was something I've never forgotten from a trainer, and
Hmm.
that was you have two ears and one mouth, and so you should listen twice as much as you speak. Okay, and dealer principals need to understand that when it comes to how the customers want things to be done, you have two ears, Mr. Dealer Principal or Mrs. Dealer Principal, and one mouth. Just once, try listening to the consumer as to what it is that they want before you try telling them what it is that they want. Trust me, the consumer knows best how it is they want to be treated and how they want this process to flow. And you need to be flexible enough as a dealer principal to A, understand that, and B, do something to make it so for the consumers.
All right, going to jump to the chat here for a couple minutes, Pops, and then we've got some other stories, some Honda news that we need to talk about, as well as the state of California, the big news coming out of the state of California. TS says, what extends consumer transaction times more than waiting on the dang thing to be built anyway? That's a great point. Very fair point. Very fair point.
But the truth is, the transaction time that everybody talks about is not waiting on it to be built, but once it is built,
know it's a joke. Pops, it's a joke.
I get it, but the point is, my point is that the dealerships have to come up with the ways so that once it is built and once the customer does show up to pick it up, that it doesn't have to drag on for an hour and a half. It should be a 30-minute process and no more.
Seeing some good negotiability on used vehicles. We had the YAA video drop with the latest Black Book data. Glad to hear it here. Steven saying he's gotten about $2,500 off on a loaded 2022 Frontier. This is great to see and great to hear. I want to jump back, though. Tellen Pops has this comment. As written, there are some conflicts and issues the FTC needs to address and clarify. The New York State Automobile Dealers Association has a decent comment explaining as much. We are not here preaching that what the FTC has drafted to a T is exactly what needs to be enacted. However, the sentiment and the ethos is definitely something that needs to find its way into reality sooner rather than later. We've got Tide saying, or Ford dealers listing F-150 Lightnings they can't sell as on the lot. Why are you wasting my time with this? We are seeing so much of that. And Core Guy's got a great suggestion for us, Pops, that ties into this. He's saying, hey, the days on market feature when I search on Join YA needs to be tweaked. The CX-9 that was marked 200 days on market was already sold, but it's still on the dealership's website. That's the reality. Why are dealerships advertising cars that aren't actually for sale? Because then it makes us look bad. It makes everyone look bad because we look at the dealer's website to find their inventory. It's really tricky to actually have reality when we're advertising cars that aren't even on the lot, aren't actually there. We've got in transit on the website to help, but yeah.
But do you think that should maybe perhaps be part of the FTC's rules, that you can't continually advertise a vehicle for sale that doesn't exist or that has already been sold, and you can't use the excuse, well, we forgot to take it off the website? That is a decision that was made by somebody to keep it on the website. Okay. And that's done in such a way to create confusion for the customer. For instance, Core Guy thought that CX-9 was at the dealership and available, when in fact it wasn't. And that was a business decision made by that dealership. And there should be rules against that. And there should be penalties for doing that.
What's is that bait and switch? I mean, that's what bait and switch is, right? We're going to advertise a car that we may or may not have at a really great price, get people in the door, and then
switch them to another car.
We just sold that one, right? I mean, and I'm not trying to, like, you can speak to that, like you like, that's real, right? That happens.
It does happen. I mean, yes, you can advertise a vehicle, and literally, if you're advertising a vehicle, a stock number with a particular VIN, okay, and yes, the vehicle can end up being sold. but it doesn't mean you continue to advertise that vehicle. Um, and if the vehicle had not been sold and somebody wanted to come in and buy it and it was available at the dealerships I worked at, guess what we did? We sold them the car at the advertised price because that's the right thing to do. That's the way you grow your business, by living up to your word. It wasn't that difficult. It's difficult for a lot of dealers, but it really isn't difficult at all if you just decide that you're going to do things the right way.
I'm reading through the chat. Pop's reminding us the proposed rules actually do say dealers can't advertise a sold vehicle. The issue is that practically it's not possible to remove vehicles instantaneously. There has to be a little wiggle room there. 100%. And we've talked about it on the show, Dad. The companies that are actually going to face the brunt of these FTC rules are not car dealerships. They're vendors of car dealerships. It's the Reynolds and Reynolds of the world that need to get up to speed. And again, if you haven't seen it before on this show, we go on Auto News all the time, the industry publication. One of their latest and greatest advertisers that we've seen, Dad, is dealeraddendumstickers.com or whatever the hell it is. Okay,
Yeah.
You know what? If they can find ways to sell, vendors can find ways to sell products to dealerships for addendum sticker subscription software, whatever, they can find ways to get cars off of their website within, 12 hours.
Well, let me give you a little bit of insight into this. Okay, a car is advertised at a price. The customer comes in. Okay, they agree to buy it. Let's say we're at a dealership where they deliver cars before they necessarily have an approval from the bank. Okay,
Spot delivery, is that what that's called?
It's called a spot delivery. It might take 3 or 4 days to finally convince the bank or a bank to approve the loan as the deal was structured. That car is going to continue to show up on that dealer's website. And the reason for that is because it hasn't been in the system, it hasn't been finalized. And the software doesn't know to take it out of the inventory until a deal is finalized. And that happens every night between midnight and whatever hour in the morning when they scrape the business transactions from the day to see what's been sold, what deals have been finalized, so they know what vehicles to remove from inventory. So, yeah, there can be a 3 or 4 day lag. There also wouldn't have to be a lag if you don't deliver the car until you actually have an approval. So even if you don't have the approval, I mean, those
Let's
situations
keep moving, Pops.
develop.
Let's keep moving.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We've got a couple other chat messages, and then we have to jump into this Honda news. We've got Dad from Daisy. First time purchasing a brand new car just because my bucket kicked it. They literally made me cry when I asked them to lower their add-ons and said, no, you can go. So I left. Good for you, Daisy.
Yeah.
And I want to remind Daisy and everyone else, we have the Driven for Women community back on the YAA community forum. Daisy, send Kimberly, or actually send the email to help, HELP at joinyaa.com. Get in that community specifically for women going through the car buying process. You have a great community there to support you. Pops, we've got this from Punk Rock Wife. My go-to dealership, Longo Toyota of El Monte, California, has dropped their pre-owned vehicles by $1,500 to $4,000. What's your take, guys?
Well, that's a Penske organization, and they know what they're doing. They know what's going on in the market, so that they're adjusting their prices accordingly because wholesale values are going down, and they realize the value of their inventory is going down with it.
Punk Rock Wife, if you could go over to the YAA channel and respond to all of the comments that call us morons for suggesting that used car prices are going down, please remind them that this is happening. It actually is happening, and you can negotiate now, unlike before. Before you get into it, Bob's from David. He says, Manheim Auction Riverside, which is owned by Cox Automotive, their lot is filled with thousands of cars, most inventory ever in history, a lot of repos. Good insight, David. We appreciate you sharing.
Thank you, David. Yes.
All right, Dad, let's switch gears and talk Honda. This from Keith. He says, Honda dealership in Atlanta told me they don't raise prices because of car shortages. That's great. Then wanted to charge over $3,700 for nitrogen air, tinted windows, paint protection, and floor mats. That is incredible. But, Dad, we have this from Canadian
Yes.
Kid. My Honda manager laid me off. He said things are really scary. Let's look at automotive news, Dad. The headline in automotive news is pretty scary.
Yes.
Honda grapples with production headaches in Japan and China. Production will be cut by up to 40% domestically in Japan in early September. Wow.
Yes, and this has to do with the heat waves, the electricity cutbacks in China, and so this is severely impacting Honda's ability to domestically in Japan produce the level of inventory that they'd like to be able to produce. And it's forced them at one of the plants to cut production by 40%, and at another one of their plants to cut it by 30%. So they're having the same issues in Japan that they're having here, which is why they're operating at almost an all-time low for on-hand inventory, and it impacts the personnel count at dealerships. If you can't get as many cars as you need, well, then typically you don't need as many people to help sell the lower number of cars that you have.
I'm going to pull it up on the screen. Give me 1 second here to get it, Dad. But Asian automakers have been struggling more than their peers, and Honda is the taking the brunt of that. That's for sure.
Yes.
Let me get it pulled up here. I just need a second. It has
And
been
it's not
telling,
just
though.
and
Yeah.
it's not just Honda, it's Toyota. Toyota came out and said it's going to be a year before we start to see significant improvements of what we're able to produce. And obviously, the same situation is there for Honda. The Asian brands have been getting clobbered recently with these production issues, and so much of it has to do with what goes on in China, because of the drought issues, the heat issues, the rolling brownouts. It's impacting everything.
This data comes by way of 4eyes.io. They're an industry, I don't know, they work with car dealers. They have great data and it's available for free. So
Yes.
we love it. New inventory by brand. This is comparing inventory levels in April of 2020 to August of 2022. Honda inventory levels are down 84.4%. Subaru inventory levels for that time period down 75.7%. Toyota inventory levels down 60%. Mazda inventory levels down 41.9%. So you can see here, and it's interesting, Dad. Like, look at Mazda, for example. There have been some huge swings in available inventory.
Yes.
Back in February, inventory was quite high. But for the most part, orange line, Honda, they've been down here and they've
Yeah.
been struggling. And we've seen this impact average transaction prices and incentive amounts as well. The latest quarterly data we have for Honda, Dad, showed that average transaction prices were up 16% quarter over quarter, and incentive amounts were below $1,000 for Honda vehicles. For the first time in a long time, incentives down north of 50% year over year. So Honda is struggling the most, it seems like, out of that
Yes.
group. Toyota's being very upfront about their challenges as well.
Absolutely, and it's going to go on for a while. It really is.
Great comment here from Mark, Dad. Mazda is almost the exclusive internal combustion engine vehicles. Coincidence?
I don't know. I mean, for the most part, Honda's almost exclusively ICE vehicles.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. It's a fair point. Why don't we take a peek actually at some EV and internal combustion engine news, Dad? This is probably the biggest story of the day. California finalizes details on banning gasoline-powered vehicle sales. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, announced the 2035 goal about 2 years ago, but now we have a firm timetable for getting there. Let's pull that up so we can all see it. Currently, about 15% of new cars that are sold in the state of California are zero-emission vehicles. 35% of new vehicles sold by 2026 will need to be zero-emission vehicles. 68% of vehicles sold in California will need to be zero-emission by 2030. And 100% of vehicles sold, new vehicles sold in the state of California in 2035 will need to be zero emissions. Zero emissions, Pops. What was your reaction to seeing this headline?
Um, I think they're over their skis a little bit, honestly. I think the timeline that they've laid out isn't necessarily doable. And I think when you impose these arbitrary timelines, it creates a situation where manufacturers either can't get to where they need to be, but they will falsify the data to suggest that they have.
Yep.
Um, or you're just wishing and hoping that it can happen as quickly as you'd like it to happen. I think there needs to be flexibility of this moving forward. There's still going to be millions and millions of ICE vehicles on the roads in California after 2035. Because it only bans brand new ones come 2035. And if the grid and the infrastructure isn't capable of supporting all these electric vehicles, they might have to look at their timeline moving forward again. So, I think it's an important step. I think it's more of a wishful step, and I don't really. I mean, I might not be around to see it, but I don't really see where it can happen to the degree that they would like it to in that time frame. But that's just me. What can I tell you?
One of the most important things I think you hit on, Dad, is the unintended consequences of a decision like this. It reminds me of the stories we've heard about emissions scandals. And most
Yes,
recently, remember Hino Motors, the Toyota
yes.
truck division, which actually Toyota, if I'm not mistaken, got out of that after that emissions scandal broke. But essentially what happened at Hino and has happened in other emissions scandals is engineers just need to make numbers, hit certain thresholds, and that's what they do. And I just get nervous here that when we have these rules in place, it just creates unintended consequences where people are going to be intentionally doing things that are nefarious to break the rules, but the reality is they don't really have another option because it's an unrealistic target. We'll be talking about this a bunch on the YAA Electric channel, so I encourage you to take a peek over there. But it is a big step towards going zero emission, which generally speaking, I'm a huge fan of that. Huge fan of that. Definitely concerned about how quickly we're trying to get there.
If that actually happened in
Hmm.
Southern California, people would realize that there's actually mountains to the east of LA, but they very rarely come into vision because of all the pollution in the area. You can't see them.
Yeah, this is true. I was recently there for being with Laura's family. It's kind of gross, honestly. No offense to those of you who live in Southern California, but it's just a little gross. It's a little gross to see the pollution in the air.
I remember when we lived in Arizona, it was the same thing. I mean, you could just see a brown layer in the atmosphere laying over the valley. And that's pollution, and it just gets trapped there. But yeah, I mean, there are mountains between the Pacific Ocean moving eastward towards the rest of the country that many people in LA have no idea even exist. And I'm sure there's many who have never ever seen them because there's never been a clear day.
This is true. All right, friendly reminder, join YAA.com. All the tools, all the resources, the community forum. If you need auto insurance, we're working. Had meetings this week. Kimberly and I were on them with credit unions. We're getting closer to being able to do financing through our credit union partners. All sorts of great stuff back at joinyaa.com. Pops, we will actually be back tomorrow with Miss Kimberly Klein. Fridays with Miss Kimberly Klein. So we will have her on the show tomorrow. I'm trying to think what else. Anything we need to promote? Anything? I mean, we usually go
Well,
long on these shows, but
I think we should inform our viewers, especially those who on the main channel who look forward to our Saturday night live stream, that there won't be one this Saturday. Somebody will be traveling, having a weekend away, and it's not me.
Where are you going, Pops?
If I was to go somewhere, I would probably go to Nemanco, Pennsylvania. But and then maybe take in Falling Water, the Frank Lloyd Wright designed house. But it's not me, and so I won't be there. But if you see anybody in that area that looks a lot like Zach and Laura, well, it could be them.
No show Saturday night, but we will be back tomorrow, Friday,
Yeah.
August 26th. So we'll see you guys tomorrow at noon. And then, of course, on Monday. Pops, I look forward. We've got a couple other stories for tomorrow that I think will be great. And again, Miss Kimberly Klein will be joining us as well. Pops, go enjoy your Thursday. Thanks for all
You
your
do
time
the
today.
same.
Appreciate it.
You do the same. I'll see you. I think we have a meeting at 3:30, so I'll see you
Yes.
at 3:30. In the meantime, I'm going to make myself a little lunch.
Enjoy, Dad. I love you.
I love you too. I'll talk to you later. We'll see everybody back here again tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, with more news that you can use from YAA. Thanks for being here, everybody.